Hello, this is my informative speech, Can You Hear the Spheres? And I'm doing it on Kurt Cobain and his journey with Nirvana. I'll begin with a quote. Music speaks what can't be expressed, soothes the mind and gives it rest, heals the heart and makes it whole, flows from heaven to the soul. This means a lot to me, and hopefully it means a lot to you. Because in my opinion, music is life, man. Now, I chose Kurt Cobain and Nirvana because of their outstanding impact on the music industry, and then also coincidentally, myself. Nirvana has impacted me in so many different ways, musically and emotionally. A lot of my drive to learn guitar in the first part is so that I can just rock out to Smells Like Teen Spirit. That's awesome. So, he really has a deep connection with me, and that's why I chose to do my project with him. Today, I will inform you of the life of Kurt Cobain, his music journey, and his unprecedented fame with Nirvana, and also his unfortunate, tragic, and early death. Now, Kurt Cobain was born in Aberdeen, Washington on February 20th, 1967. He was a really happy kid at first, only until his parents got divorced. Then, a lot of the emotional turmoil that was caused afterwards drove him to rebel, to start neglecting his family life. And you could see that a lot of this actually poured into his musical work later in his career. But regardless, he would start staying over at relatives and friends to try to get away from home. And some nights he would even stay in bridges to try to do drugs. And this type of behavior was completely due to the fact of his emotional state at the time. It's very unfortunate, but it's what happened. And things like this have rolled over into his musical genre and his deliverance and his performance. And honestly, without this, he may not have been able to give up such a performance. But regardless, Cobain's family had a musical background. So at a young age, Cobain was exposed to many musical instruments, and he quickly became musically inclined. His local band, the Melvins, even invited him to play when he was older. Here we can see him performing at a live show, and right next to this, you can see him at 7 years old with a guitar already in hand. It is no doubt that he was musically inclined at a young age. It was only until when he had performed a demo with the drummer of the Melvins, who consequently also gained national fame, that their bassist, Chris Novoselic, reached out to Kurt Cobain. He said, "I like what you do." So they teamed up and they created their own band, Nirvana, in 1987. It wasn't until 1990 that Dave Grohl joined the band, because that was after their first studio album. Regardless, in the early years, Nirvana was a popular local Seattle band associated with the terms grunge, punk rock, and alternative, also considered the pioneers of the genre itself. Now, we have Nirvana in the works. The group's demo tapes found its way to a Jonathan Pullman of the Seattle independent record label called Sub Pop, and they signed Nirvana to produce its first single, Love Buzz, in 1988, and their first album, Bleach, in 1989. It had a really unique and soon-to-be iconic sound that mixed the rawness of punk rock with pop hooks, and therefore, as a result, they started becoming the target of just many listeners, and a lot of different other record labels wanted to sign them off too. They started gaining a lot of popularity, and one of the Melvins had referred to them to Dave Grohl. And it was this when they did their second studio album, also their most popular. They released Nevermind in 1991, and the band experienced unprecedented commercial success and critical acclaim as a result. They became known for their super distinct switches from a soft sound to an incredibly heavy sound to further draw out a connection of the grunge feel. Now, and then they also adopted many of the normalities from like headbanging and going into concerts. They were doing crazy stuff, and that honestly is just so cool. So to be able to create an image like this and to be able to run with it, that is crazy. That is crazy in my opinion. Now we start out with their top singles. Of course, we're not gonna have anything other than "Smells Like Teen Spirit" in the beginning. It got worldwide success, topped the charts in countries all across the globe, and um, and was really forefront for a generation. This song is iconic in so many different ways. It's impacted me. It's one of the first things I played on guitar when I started out. So it's really awesome. Now, another one of my favorites is "Come As You Are." This depiction is where it was filmed, the music video. Although incredibly weird, it's totally Kurt Cobain, and I love it. "Come As You Are" is just such an encapsulation of the "I don't care." And with that, I am so deeply in love. This song was released March 1992, and it was the second single of Nevermind. Now we have "Lithium." This song was released in March 1991, and it was 1992, and it was the third single of Nevermind. It wasn't until this song is about a man who turns to religion amid thoughts of suicide. Now we have our next song, "Something in the Way." This was released September 1991, along with the entire album, the studio album of Nevermind, and it's also said that the inspiration behind this song was the times where he would stay under bridges and do drugs. It was incredibly famous. It was the famous Yonge Street Bridge, where he claimed that he would stay under bridges and start to create music and really wail in his depression. Another favorite of mine, we have "Heart Shaped Box." This was released August 1993, already a year after, and it was the first single of In Utero, unfortunately their third and final studio album at the time. It was the last song that Kurt performed with Nirvana in March 1994. This is where we have them performing in 1994. Unfortunately, it was the last time they performed live. To think that I'd be able to see them live today would probably be amazing, but he really was a martyr. So next off, we have "The Man Who Sold the World." It was originally by David Bowie, and it was famously covered by Kurt Cobain here in the famous MTV Unplugged. This is really just an iconic performance, and has also baffled me as a guitarist, because he really shows this movement of we need to keep going with the song. He, during the solo, messes up a note, but he goes under it and he regains his momentum as an artist, and that's truly something inspiring. Like, regardless of such an inferior mistake, you don't stop. He has that mental motivation to continue because he has this feeling that he needs to put out this music in the first place. This is probably my favorite song from them, regardless. And now, unfortunately, we have his death and the impact surrounding that. In 1992, before his death, Cobain had married Courtney Love, the then leader of the band Hole, and they had a daughter that same year. She wasn't the best towards for his mental health, and would usually start pushing him to do different things and act different ways. But Kurt, already incredibly fragile mentally, is not someone who can withstand that sort of pressure from someone. And it was thought that Courtney Love was a great deal of why Kurt ended up taking his life. But regardless, they had released their final studio album, In Utero, and it was then when Kurt had experienced his most pain. The fame that was already garnered with Nirvana as a band was taking its toll on him. He turned to drugs. He used a lot of heroin in the years of Nirvana's breakthrough, and he took a variety of painkillers to try and numb the constant pain that he was receiving. Not only that, but he also had a chronic stomach illness, and that pain is something that he really wanted to get rid of. With the money and the fame, you start to neglect the advice from genuine people in your life, and you can start to turn to these things. And unfortunately, that's what happened, because in March 1994, he was hospitalized in Rome, and after overdosing and slipping into a coma with what was later characterized as a failed suicide attempt, he snuck out, flew back to Seattle, where his homeland was, and he shot himself with a shotgun. Incredibly gruesome, but he had left a note behind, and this is one of the most famous suicide notes in history, probably. Kurt Cobain has a lot of cryptic references that he made in this suicide note, and it's honestly cool to see, but so tragic at the same time. Really, Cobain has been remembered as one of the most iconic rock musicians in the history of alternative music. His angst, the grunge, he totally encapsulated the genre and created an era in which he could lead and be an icon of Generation X. Since then, Nirvana has been inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they're considered among the most influential bands in modern rock. The Grammy-winning band has sold nearly 100 million records worldwide. Following Kurt's death, Nirvana's drummer Dave Grohl actually became the lead singer of a different band called the Foo Fighters. The name of the Foo Fighters was based on a mysterious light found in the U.S. plains in World War II. Now, a cool reference, which I actually think, is that Red Hot Chili Peppers singer Anthony Kiedis, he referenced this in Californication, and he asked, "And Cobain, do you hear the spheres singing songs of Station to Station?" Station to Station is a fitting tribute, in my opinion, because Station to Station is by David Bowie, and Kurt Cobain's last performance was the MTV performance, the performance in which he played The Man Who Sold the World, also by David Bowie. And so Anthony, later asking from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, "Can you hear the spheres singing songs off Station to Station?" is asking really if Kurt Cobain can hear his bandmates playing for him in his memory. And that's really cool, in my opinion. So, and here I have a now picture, because the Nevermind baby, now a lot older, took another picture, so I thought that was incredibly cool. But regardless, in short, I have spoken to you today about Kurt Cobain. He's a legend and a martyr, unfortunately, to see him go so soon. He was a symbol of a generation, the entire lasting force of Generation X at his time, whether he wanted to or not, in the end. But regardless, Nirvana, also a legendary band whose music is still impacting others in the present. I think that's amazing how 30 years ago, I'm still listening to it. There's no reason. A lot of things have been forgotten by then, but to make a lasting impact shows this sort of specialty of how amazing and true a music can be and affect people. And now I must leave you with the question, can you hear the spheres?